Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Let's Talk Thyroid podcast. This is episode 88, and you are with me today talking all about travel. The Thyroid Traveller. Is that you? It's been me the last little while. I've just come back from 2 weeks in Japan, and there's a lot of questions that often arise around the topic of travel. What do you do with medication? Does it need to be refrigerated? How do you manage that? How do you manage various thyroid symptoms that might impact on your travel? So that's what I'm going to dive into while it's all fresh in my mind. Having not done a lot of travel over the last few years, I thought we might all need a bit of a refresher. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm going to do a bit of show and tell at the end, particularly when it comes to the essential oils and supplements and things like that I take. I'm just going to show them to you for something so you're not just looking at me. But you're not really going to miss out if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever else you're listening. But don't forget, I do share these on YouTube. So if you do want to watch, particularly when I'm talking with a guest, you might want to see us interacting, then feel free to watch it on YouTube. Before I dive in, I just want to let you know that now I've come back, I've got a couple of things on the horizon. May in Australia is Thyroid Awareness Month, and I would really like to share lots of thyroid stories throughout May. It's about awareness. So I think the more that we talk, the more that we share our different stories, the more that helps spread awareness, both within our thyroid community or people who know they have a thyroid condition. Maybe it will help them to connect some dots between, what's happened in the past or various, symptoms or ailments that might be connected to their thyroid health, but it also will help to spread awareness beyond, into those people who may be just suffering along with a thyroid condition and not yet be diagnosed. So if you would like to help me in that, let's call it a global mission, even though it is Thyroid Awareness Month just in Australia in May, can be anywhere around the world, doesn't really matter. If you would like to share your thyroid story with me and then I will share it with others, then please click on the link that's in the notes below to book just a 20-minute time to chat with me about it. I'll record it and share it throughout the month of May. Doesn't matter where you are in your thyroid journey, we never get there, we never arrive. So maybe you're brand new, maybe it doesn't really matter where you are or what thyroid condition you've got. I would love to hear your story. So let's do that. The second thing about sharing your story is you may not know, but last year I wrote a little workbook called Write Your Own Thyroid Story. I've got it somewhere on a copy on my desk. Not sure. Can't find it right now. I was going to show it up, but it's called Write Your Thyroid Story, Connect the Dots and Begin Your Thyroid Healing Journey. You'll get it on Amazon. It's just a little booklet it's a workbook. So it's to guide you writing your own thyroid story for your own benefit. And then you've got that information to take with you to any practitioners you might see. You've just got it all in one little document. You can buy it on Amazon. You can also buy it directly off my website, letstalkthyroid.com, as a download and print yourself at home. I'm saying that now because I think I haven't worked out the details of this yet, but I want to do something in May, probably the second half of May, around maybe like a 5-day challenge where we all write our thyroid stories together as a bit of a group. And so it would be really helpful if you've pre-ordered the workbook if you want the physical copy, or you've downloaded and printed it at home. So that is that. And the very last thing before we dive right into all about travel is on World Thyroid Day, which is the 25th of May, I am hosting a morning tea at my home in The Gap, which is in Brisbane. So if you are local, like as in you live in Brisbane or perhaps Southeast Queensland, and you would like to come for morning tea on the 25th of May, I would love to host you. So again, I'll put a link in the show notes to book in for that. It's a $20 fee. That will cover morning tea and a little gift and just a lovely couple of hours of hanging out with other people in this thyroid-friendly community where we can all talk thyroid health. We can be inspired, encouraged. You can bring your friends who may or may not have a thyroid condition. It doesn't really matter. It's just a good excuse to get together for morning tea And I will make sure that it is all very thyroid friendly morning tea, and we'll have a whole lot of fun together. So I would love to have you. I would love to meet you. So if you are local, if you're not local, why don't you organise your own little World Thyroid Day get together? That would be my challenge to you. Right. So now let's dive into the thyroid traveller and how we can navigate a thyroid condition whilst we travel, or navigate travel with a thyroid condition. So, like I said at the start, we have, as in my family and I, have just come back from a 2-week holiday in Japan. Now, I don't think Japan is the easiest country to travel in from a thyroid-friendly food perspective, but I'll come to that. And oh my gosh, I don't know if you've been traveling in the last year or so since the world has reopened. This has been our first overseas trip since the pandemic, and it just felt so good to be out of the country, exploring the world, seeing a different culture, and just remembering that we live in such a big world. And, you know, that's one of the things I love about travel. So topic of travel was fresh on my mind. And look, I don't know, there's lots of different elements to travel. I mean, this could probably, I'm sure there are lots of travel focused podcasts. So this is just one little episode. I would say when I'm talking about travel, particularly in the context of this discussion, I'm not talking about a weekend at the beach, although some of the tips that I will share are useful for that as well. This is probably more focused on your bigger trips, your more adventure style travel. I make a distinction between travel and a holiday. To me, a holiday is lying back on the beach and reading a book, and it's really relaxing and it's time out. For me, that's usually involves water. Maybe it's mountains or something like that for you. But it's more the quiet downtime. And travel is a bit more the adventure, seeing different culture, going to, usually for me, out of Australia. So that's my personal distinction. And there's some of the tips that I guess I'm sharing probably relate a little bit more to travel than to holiday, but obviously there's some overlap. I'm by no means the world's most traveled person, but I do like to travel. In fact, when Lee and I first met, he'd never been on a holiday, basically. And I'm like, well, I don't really do no holidays. I pretty much at that point had whatever I earned, I spent on holidays. I really like to travel. I like the idea of exploring the world and different cultures and having those different experiences, getting outside of my own little bubble. We all live in bubbles. Sometimes those bubbles are really nice and comfortable, but I think it's important as part of being, just a human being in a global environment to just get out and meet different people. So not traveling wasn't really an option for our marriage. So Lee has adapted, I would say. I don't think he really loves it still in the same way as I do. He's pretty keen at this point to travel with me, and this perhaps was the last overseas family holiday that we've done. And even this last trip was down one adult child. There was only 4 of us, not 5 of us this trip. So who knows what will happen in the future. But we have been fortunate to do a lot of travel throughout our marriage and family. And, we've been to places like the UK and France. We went for my mum's 60th birthday a few years ago. That was a big adventure with 3 little children in the middle of winter. Let's just say probably wasn't our favourite family holiday, but we did have a lot of very special moments, particularly around Christmas and mum's birthday. And, and at that point in time, I wasn't following what I would call now a thyroid-friendly lifestyle. I definitely, by the end of 5 or 6 weeks of eating a lot of gluten and sugar, was feeling, it's noticeable actually in the photos from that trip, beginning to end. I'd gained a lot of weight. I was puffy. Probably wasn't feeling that great. Probably wasn't just managing my health all that well, which probably didn't help with the stresses of traveling with 3 small children for 6 weeks overseas. So that it was not long after I came back from that trip actually that I really started to learn more about being paleo and really started that big journey. So that was probably our last big trip where I wasn't trying to manage my thyroid health proactively. Obviously, I was taking medication, but that was probably about it. Since then, we've been to New Zealand a couple of times, Japan now twice. So we've been once back in 2014. Again, we'll just come back if you're listening to this some point down in the future, April 2023 was when we last went to Japan. Vietnam, which was my favorite family holiday for a number of different reasons. Thyroid-friendly food definitely makes it one of the key reasons why it was my favorite family holiday. Pretty much everything there is gluten-free, rice-based noodles, rice-based everything. They use fish sauce to flavor, not soy sauce like they do in Japan. So that was really easy to eat and cheap and fresh and delicious. And if you haven't been to Vietnam, go to Vietnam. We've been to South Korea. So South Korea in our first Japan trip was skiing holidays. South Korea was fabulous, lots of fun. And where else have we been? The United States, we went to the USA just before, September 2019. So before all the craziness started. And now back to Japan. So we've done a bit of travel, a lot around Asia. We live in Australia. Asia is easy to get to. The time zone differences aren't as great, which is a factor when you're dealing with a thyroid condition and fatigue. And that's not the reason we've been there, but that's, not because of my thyroid condition, but the not massive time zone difference does make a difference when you're traveling with kids. And it's probably been easier for me with my thyroid health as well, I guess, to not have to manage the big time zone differences. So that's just a little bit of background on my, where we've been, and maybe some of the little stories will come out as we go along as well. But I think from the get-go, it's when you're talking about traveling, and whether you're going for a week, a month, however long, the length of time is a factor depending on how healthy you are, how energetic you are, how much stamina you've got, obviously how much money you've got, and depending on where you're going. But the length of time does influence your holiday. But regardless of how long you're away, you want to feel good whilst you're traveling. And feeling good whilst you're traveling requires, I believe, maintaining some, if not most, of your thyroid-friendly routine and patterns or habits or whatever you want to say that you follow at home on the holiday. Not to ruin your holiday, to improve your holiday. Because if you start eating everything when you're away that you don't normally eat at home, you're actually going to feel pretty crappy, and that will have a negative impact on your holiday. So I think it took me a little bit to get my head around traveling and holidaying with some food restrictions in particular, because let's face it, food's a massive part of holidaying and traveling. And, so I think years ago, it was probably our first trips, maybe to Japan and then New Zealand, that I kind of got my head around there were going to have to be some adjustments on holidays to how I traveled before. And that was okay. And that was okay. And that actually helped the holiday feel good, me feel good, and really enjoy it. So I just think if we feel well, we'll travel well. And we've got to remember that from the outset. So part of preparing for your trip is actually making sure that we're leaving on our trip feeling good, feeling healthy, feeling fit. And on this last trip that we've just come back from, I'm really grateful that I didn't do it back in December, which is when I'd really wanted to travel. I was getting itchy feet after the lockdown in Australia being kind of cut off from the world for a while. I was pretty keen to travel before Christmas, but it just wasn't, the stars weren't aligning for an overseas trip then. And before Christmas, we travelled down the New South Wales coast to Sydney, where we were having Christmas. We had a couple of nice beach holidays, and it was very relaxing. And looking back, I needed that style of trip at that point in time. My thyroid health had gone a bit crazy. I was tired. I was emotional. I think I get more emotional, easily irritated and upset when my thyroid hormones are out of balance. And so if I had have tried to do a travel holiday, like different culture, different language, different foods, then it just would have been much tougher. Whereas this time in April, I've been feeling really good. Like from March, end of February, I've really been cleaning up my diet, reducing my carb intake. I've lost a few kilos. In fact, from after the holiday, I lost 1.5 kilos whilst we were away. So I've lost a total of 5 kilos since the beginning of March, which is pretty incredible for me. I don't know, like that hasn't happened for a long time. So I guess I was trying to lose some kilos, not for the holiday, but because I knew that I'd gained kilos and wasn't feeling good for it. But that did mean I left on the holiday feeling good. I've also for months and months been doing walking and strength training, and so my physical health was good as well. And I think that really helped because we did an enormous amount of walking, calculated that we walked 175 kilometers, which was something like 230,000 steps, significantly more than my normal daily goal of 6,000 steps. I think some days we hit 20, 25, the highest was 28,000. And so if my health wasn't good, if my thyroid health wasn't good, if my fitness wasn't good, we wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to do that, and I would have slowed down the family. So just part of that preparing for a good trip is, I think, being in good health, even if it's not like, hiking through hiking through the Himalayas or doing some big, massive walk. If it's just sightseeing around a city, you still need to have stamina. So that is part, I think, of the preparing for the trip. Now, I want to cover a couple of specific things like medication. I'm going to cover medication, food, just packing, how we pack light, and then essential oils and supplements that relate to thyroid health whilst we're traveling. So medication I want to cover first because often people ask about that. Now, I'm only talking thyroid medication, and my personal experience is with pretty much the stock standard thyroid medication, which is what I take, which is levothyroxine. In different countries, it's going to be labelled differently. In Australia, it's either Oroxin or eutroxig. If you can see on video, I'm just holding up one of the little blister packs. Now, this medication is usually kept in the fridge. What I do is pull out one little blister pack and leave it next to my bed. These last for up to 21 days out of the fridge. So the box with the rest of the blister packs is in the fridge. I just pull out one at a time. That's my normal practice. And so it depends on how long I'm going away for as to whether any of my medication needs to be kept in the fridge. But for 2 weeks holiday, which is what we just came back from Japan, I could just leave this out in my bag. It did not need to be refrigerated. So it will do, but there are some thyroid medications that do need to be refrigerated. My suggestion is if you are on a different kind of thyroid medication that you do normally keep in the fridge, that you speak with the pharmacist is probably the best person to advise, or do some internet search as to whether or not it can remain out of the fridge for any extended length of time. If it can't, then you can get little refrigerated packs, like, little ice packs to travel. If it's really important, you could, to keep it cold, even while, say, on a plane, you could ask the cabin crew to keep it in a fridge. You just got to remember to take it with you. Most places you stay will have a little bar fridge. If they don't, then I'm sure the reception of wherever you're staying would have a fridge that you could keep it in. I think there's lots of workarounds for that. You can plan ahead. You can, inquire ahead of where you're staying as to whether there'll be refrigeration facilities. So I think, I guess probably the thing with the medication, if it needs to be refrigerated, I think once you put it in the fridge, is to remember that it's there. And I guess even with the levothyroxine, like the little blister packs, if you're going for, say, a month or two, then take out the blister packs and just keep some of them in the fridge whilst you keep the ones you're actually using out of the fridge next to your bed. When I'm traveling, this last trip we traveled with all carry-on luggage, which I loved, and I'll come back to that. But I did split my medication across my bags. I had like a little cabin-sized wheelie bag and a backpack and a very small handbag. And so I kept basically some medication in my handbag and some in my wheelie bag, just spread across two. I always take a little bit extra in case, I don't know, plane's delayed or something happens and I've got to stay where I am a little bit longer. And I spread it across the bags in case something gets lost or stolen, that I've still got some medication in the other bag. So that is a bit of a tip as well. What else do we need to know? Well, medication, I was checking my notes. Oh yeah, if you're not sure about the country that you're traveling to and their requirements for medication, you may need to take either a copy of your script or like with this trip to Japan, I just took the box that the thyroid medication comes in that's got my name printed on it with the, from the pharmacy. And so I took the box in my in my luggage as well, just that it had my name attached to it in case there are any problems. I've never had any problems at all, but I just did that as a bit of a fail safe. I think in the end, it's my thyroid medication I do need to take every day. If supplements got taken away because they didn't meet some requirements, I could live with that, but thyroid medication I do need. The other thing with medication while you're traveling is to do your best to stay in the same routine. So if you take your thyroid meds in the morning, take them in the morning. If you take them at night, take them at night. Just always remember, you still want to be taking them on an empty stomach, at least an hour before you have any food, and 2 hours away from other supplements and medications, and not with any coffee. So keep that up while you're traveling with your medication. So that's it about medication. Probably the biggest challenge with travel and a thyroid condition is food. And if you have made dietary changes to your general way you eat because of your thyroid condition, that can be a little bit trickier in different parts of the world. So I think the biggest tip I have, aside from don't throw it all out, as in don't just eat whatever you want, because I think that will have negative impacts on your trip, is to pick your battles. And the battle that I guess the line in the sand for me when I travel is I want to be eating gluten-free. I'll compromise on the dairy-free. I'll probably have a few more grains. That's where the sweet treats often come in. But I don't want to be eating gluten anywhere ever. And so that is my bottom line. That might not be your bottom line. You might have a very different bottom line, but decide ahead of time what you're prepared to kind of massage around the edges of your normal kind of lifestyle and what is a hard line in the sand that you won't compromise on, because then you're not having to debate that when you're there. So I think that makes a big difference. We obviously want to relax and have fun on our holidays. For me, although not this trip to Japan, I hardly drank any alcohol actually, and I'm not a big drinker anyway. But I know, for example, I'm going to Western Australia with mum and dad and my sister in a couple of weeks. We're going to the wine area called the Margaret River in Western Australia. I'm not a big wine drinker, but I know I'll be my family are fairly, do like their wine. So there'll be more alcohol involved on that trip than, say, my trip to Japan. And that's okay. I'll be relaxed. I'll be on holidays. That will be more of a relaxing holiday, not taking the kids. So that's okay. I know I will have more alcohol on that trip. So that's just sort of part of travel, isn't it? We want food to be enjoyable. We want to be able to explore different cuisines, different types of food in different places, but still feel good. So if you're going somewhere that's a completely different culture and the food is quite different, it's definitely worth being prepared and doing some research ahead of time to know what food is different that will still fit within your requirements. So for example, like I know, because I've been to Japan now twice, I knew that Japan was going to be a difficult place to eat gluten-free. And it was. I think if I was celiac, I would have really struggled. And I'm not to say that it's impossible, but it certainly wouldn't have been easy. And I have to say, Japan wasn't my first choice, but I was keen to travel. Other people in the family were really keen to go back to Japan. I was keen to see the cherry blossoms. It was gorgeous. But if I had to choose an Asian country to go back to, I would choose Vietnam because, it's beautiful. So many beautiful things about it, and the food is easy. So I knew that Japan was going to be tricky. I did do a fair bit of reading, like how to eat gluten-free in Japan. I looked up how to be celiac in Japan because I thought they're going to have to take it much more seriously. Although, my gluten-free bottom line is serious, but I'm not going to be crippled over in pain like a celiac would exposed to gluten. So I knew I had a little bit more leeway. So I had saved some gluten-free restaurants. I didn't end up actually finding any, but I had them saved in my travel list. I looked up things like food like okonomiyaki, which is like a kind of an egg-based pancake in Japan, always made with flour. So I knew I won't be eating okonomiyaki. I knew that was like a bit of a feature food in Osaka, but I just knew that was off limits for me. I also knew in doing the research that if there's a lot of noodle soups or ramen in Japan, and I'd known that from the first trip. I also knew that most of the noodles they use are udon noodles, which are made from wheat, or buckwheat noodles, which should be gluten-free if they're made completely from buckwheat, but often are made with wheat. So they rarely have rice noodles in Japan, not often. So I basically asked for soup without the noodles. And in Japan, they kind of looked at me like I was a completely crazy person. Like, why would you have noodle soup without the noodles? But that worked for me. I had kind of the meat and the soup. Now, I'm sure probably 90% of those soups had soy sauce in them. But I mitigate. I guess I was like, well, I think that's going to happen. I'm just going to do the best I can. I did have an image saved on my phone of like a little travel card. You'll find these online for any different language basically I can't eat gluten, and it said that in Japanese and typical kind of foods that it would be in. And look, I mean, this whole episode isn't on traveling in Japan. That's probably like you've got specific reasons, there's lots of little tips on that. But most of the restaurants there, tiny little restaurants, I just chose not to fight that battle. If I was in terms of showing the card every time, and I would have got turned away from most restaurants. So if I was celiac, I definitely would have done that. Obviously, I avoided what I could, avoided the obvious things, lots of deep fried kind of crumbed food in Japan too. So obviously didn't have those things. I was able, so one of the things that I love about traveling is, and that I think is really a helpful tip when it comes to food in other countries, is to explore the supermarkets. I love going into supermarkets of other countries, seeing how they package the food, seeing what's different. Obviously, I can't read a lot of the packaging in Japanese, but Google Translate was really helpful because I could take a photo of the ingredients on any packaging, and I could see. I don't know that, again, Google Translate's 100% accurate, but I could see obviously when it included wheat. But the benefit of shopping or exploring a supermarket is you can see things like the proteins. So like I was able to buy hot smoked salmon, poached chicken breasts. Often the supermarkets actually had like a hot box with a roasted sweet potato, which was really good. So good for snacks on the go, or if you're able to cook, which is probably it wasn't an option for us in Japan. But usually when we're traveling in other places, and because we're traveling or have been for the last, 20 years traveling as a family, we've generally stayed in places that have a kitchen. Now, for me, eating out on holidays when I'm traveling is a core part of the trip. I would not want to have to cook every meal, but having a kitchen means you can at least have food that you keep in the fridge. You can cook up breakfast. So easy way to start the day with some eggs or something if you've got a kitchen, and that does take some of the pressure off having to find restaurants that will cater for gluten-free if you are somewhere a little bit unusual, if you can cook. And so exploring the supermarkets is a really fun part of that. To me, not every supermarket trip here at home is fun. Let's be real, most of it's pretty boring, monotonous shopping. But on holidays, it's fun. Like, it's exploring those different foods. And even if I'm not buying them, I can have a look at them. I can think, I could see if you were, say, living in Japan, you could eat gluten-free because you've got much more control than when you're eating out at a restaurant. So, yeah, I guess reframing if cooking's a bit of a drag normally at home, which I get that. I like to cook, but I don't like cooking every day. Use the holidays for a bit of fun cooking, or, look for local farmers markets, food markets when you're traveling. That can be a really fun way to cook and to stay on track and feeling good with your food while you're on holidays, and having a bit of an adventure with it as well. So I really like that element of traveling. I did find it's funny because with the preparation of the last couple of podcasts, I've just been exploring using ChatGPT, which, if you're not familiar with ChatGPT, it's a new AI software. Well, it's not software, but AI. And so I'd written all my notes for today's episode yesterday, and I just copied and pasted them into ChatGPT. And I said, can you just sort of order these? And are there any, I don't think I asked if there are any other travel tips, but ChatGPT said, well, you might want to consider these extra tips for traveling with a thyroid condition. And one of them was, which I hadn't really thought too much about before going to Japan, but it was Japan specific, was be mindful that when you travel in other countries, like in Japan, many of the foods might be quite rich in iodine. Like in Japan, there's a lot of seaweed in different foods, and seaweed is high in iodine, and too much iodine can trigger thyroid problems, can trigger autoimmune thyroid disease. So if you knew that you were really sensitive to iodine, that would probably be a worthy consideration. It's not something I thought too much about while I was away, but there you go. There was a hint from ChatGPT, is be aware of the amount of iodine in some foods, particularly if you're traveling somewhere where the foods are higher in iodine than perhaps your normal diet is used to. My favourite snacks for travelling, while we're still on the topic of food, is I do think it's helpful to take snacks. Definitely on the plane, if you're travelling by plane, just having various snacks in your bag can be helpful if you can't find easy gluten-free food. And I was conscious of that in this trip, knowing that Japan wasn't going to be easy. So, on the plane, I took jerky. I really like beef jerky. We couldn't take it into Japan, so we ate it on the plane. It's not something I found in Japan, although they have a lot of kind of dried fish and stuff like that. So, but I do think generally, depending on where you're traveling, and obviously don't take food like that into another country where you can't take it, definitely can't bring it into Australia. But that is a good protein-rich snack. The other thing I found really helpful to buy in Japan, which you can buy anywhere, is bags of mixed nuts. So easy just to keep in your bag, have a handful if you're hungry. I made sure when we went out into the mountains and we were kind of away from most, civilization, I had nuts, I had some protein bars, I'd taken with me some individually sachayed protein powder shakes. I only used once, but I thought if I'm desperate, then I've got some protein, some sustenance, something to keep me going if I can't find anything. I also took on this trip some coconut aminos in a little dripper bottle, making sure that it was under the carry-on luggage limit for liquids. I didn't use it all that often. but I did have it there. I did use it sometimes just as a flavoring instead of obviously obvious soy sauce. I could use the coconut aminos, or you could take tamari if you wanted to, or a gluten-free soy sauce, just to have some seasoning. So that was helpful. And another, obviously, massive tip when you're traveling is stay hydrated. So take your water bottle or buy a water bottle when you get there, but make sure you stay hydrated. I took some Hydrolyte little dissolvable tablets. So I put one of those in my water bottle each day, just for that little bit of extra support with hydration. But you're staying hydrated, particularly if you're prone to a bit of constipation, common with Hashimoto's. I thought then staying hydrated is really important as your body's adjusting to different digestive, it's just adjusting with different foods and time zones and all of those things. So hydration, really important. All right. I've got a small note here about, actually, I think what I'll do is I'll give you a few general tips and then I'll come to the essential oils. So this trip, as I said before, we travelled completely with carry-on luggage, which was, I've got to say, fantastic. And the way that connects in with thyroid health is obviously if you are prone to aches and pains, and I am prone to aches and pains and sore muscles and hurting different body parts, then the lighter you travel, the less you've got to cart around. And so I loved that. I love the freedom actually of packing light, not having lots of things. It wasn't carting around stuff that I wasn't really wearing. But also, at least in Japan, lots of public transport, like lots of subways and trains, and just the maneuvering of it was so much easier because it was lighter and small. So less anxiety, less worry when you've just got less choice. So highly recommend the carry-on only if you can do it. Obviously, if you're traveling with big ski jackets or something like that, probably not doable, but for 2 weeks around Japan in spring was completely doable and actually really enjoyable to pack light. I even was able to pack into that my little travel pillow, which is, it's just I don't know what it is, foam travel pillow. I like to travel with my pillow because otherwise, like I've definitely had trips where I've had sore necks and woken up with like a crick neck. So traveling with my pillow helps with that. So some other considerations are we do need to be aware, like if you suffer a lot from fatigue, then and you are going on a busy holiday, then you will need to pace yourself. You will need to manage those expectations of yourself and of yourself with your travel buddies. Like if you need to take some time out, if you need to sit something out. If you need an afternoon where you just go off and wander by yourself, do that. If you need a couple of hours where you're just in the hotel room where you're staying and you don't go out with everyone else because you need a rest, then do that. But maybe you need to manage those expectations ahead of time. So you certainly don't want to come back from your holiday having, exhausted your thyroid, burnt out your adrenals, and, coming back needing to take months to recover from a trip. That's definitely not what you want to do. So you know yourself best. If you need to pace yourself whilst you're there, then you need to pace yourself whilst you're there, and know that you'll get much more out of the bits that you can participate in than kind of just slogging yourself and ending up in a big heap at the end. I think they're the main other tips I've got really. Enjoy the benefit. Like one of the things I really did enjoy about walking more, or just being more active. Normally I'm sitting here at my computer recording videos or, writing show notes, blah, blah, blah. And I struggle to get even to 6,000 steps without going for a deliberate walk. So one of the nice things about travel is that you're just out and about, just more active, just more movement in the day. I really enjoyed that. I did find a couple of days, certainly on the big walking days, my right hip was playing up. I do take my, I've got like a little spiky ball, which I didn't take the spiky one. I just took a little hard ball that you can used to massage into trigger points, like lean it up against a wall and kind of get into your butt muscles. So when my hips tight, with lots of walking, just having that was helpful. I also did my little back stretch exercises, not all the time, but when I could feel that my body was, I'd probably been pushing the walking a little bit far, then that was also really helpful just to prevent against, I didn't want to end up where my back went out. That was probably, that would have been terrible. And so I was pretty careful to make sure that I was doing those warming up exercises in the morning, getting my back moving, my hips moving, and the trigger point ball where I needed to. All right. Now, the last little section I want to cover is about essential oils and travel and some supplements as well, because actually there are a few of these things that I just won't travel without. I'd be pretty devastated if I forgot to take, to be honest. And a couple that I think really did mitigate whatever gluten I was exposed to in Japan. So I've been using essential oils for about 7 years, I think now. I've traveled with lots of essential oils before. I've pared this down to pretty much my core essentials, things that I just don't travel without. So here are my non-negotiable oils, and I'm going to hold them up here. I've got them. I think I've got most of them here. The first one is Digestion. Now, Digestion is a blend of oils that are good for supporting digestion. So things like ginger, cardamom, anise, peppermint, coriander, fennel. There's a blend of oils, but it doesn't really matter where in the world or at home I'm traveling. I travel with Digestion because you just tend to eat more and eat differently when you travel. And because I knew I was going to be exposed to gluten in Japan, I made sure I took Digestion in the form of a soft gel, which I'm showing is basically like a little tablet of an oil, the oil blend in a little, they call it a soft gel, but like a little capsule, I suppose. And with every meal, I just took one Digestion soft gel and one Terrazyme, which is a digestive enzyme, with all the meals. And I think that really mitigated a whole lot of fallout and potential fallout. I did still have 1 or 2 days where I ended up with diarrhea. I actually think it was tofu and soy that I'd had rather than gluten, but I don't know. I definitely had some changes to my digestive system, just adjusting to eating different foods. So Digestion definitely a essential for me. I also like to take frankincense, and I like to take them in these little 5 ml bottles. I'm going to just show up a 15 ml bottle in comparison. Little 5 ml bottles are just better for travel because they're smaller. And when we're traveling internationally, there are liquid restrictions as well. So the smaller the bottles, the better, I think. So frankincense, I just love it because it's a catch-all. If in doubt, use frankincense. It can be used for such a variety of things. It's supportive of our immune system and skin irritations and calming. So like I could put a drop on the roof of my mouth just to calm myself down. So it's just there as a backup, I suppose, the frankincense. On Guard, which is a protective blend, I usually take that in the form of the soft gels. So I'll hold up another one of those. They look like the Digestion ones, but different oils. This is really just to protect ourselves against different bugs and threats that we come in contact with while we're traveling. I've got to say, in Japan, like we traveled on lots of public transport. We must have been exposed to, I don't know, thousands and thousands and thousands of people and breathing and coughing and sneezing and, just exposure to a whole lot of stuff. So taking a bit of On Guard there is helpful. I definitely was taking that in the lead up to going away as well. I wanted to make sure we were well before we went away. We had to do PCR tests to make sure we didn't have COVID before we went to Japan. So, so we were taking a fair bit of preventative, proactive immune support before we left. What else do I take? I take Aroma Touch, which is a massage blend, because I do get lots of aches and pains. And I put this on my legs with some moisturizer each night just to prevent against like those twitchy legs as I sleep. And so this was really nice. I actually, after the couple of the big days of walking where we had a bath, I had a nice bath and I put a couple of drops of the Aroma Touch in the bath, which was really nice and soothing after a big day of walking. So that's a non-negotiable. I keep saying non-essential, a non-negotiable for me. Ice Blue, which is, again, similar to the Aroma Touch, but a little bit more pack in the punch if you do have actively sore muscles. doTERRA now make this in a stick format, which you can see if you're watching it on YouTube. It's a bit like a deodorant stick, I suppose, less messy than the rub. And so that was really easy. Definitely rubbed that on my hip and lower back on the big walking days. Now, this is still all my non-negotiables. There's not too many, actually. Correct-X, which is like a little ointment I'm holding up, you can see. This is like for everything skin. So, and it's a little bit goes such a massive way. But we used this. It's got some oils in there that are good. Like if you get a cut or a sting, it's going to help, I want to make sure I'm not saying the wrong thing, but it's just going to help if you have cuts or stings or irritated skin that needs a bit of extra protection. Also really good as a lip balm. We had lots of drier weather over there, so dry lips, so doubles as a lip balm. But yeah, also even a little bit of, if you had too much sun exposure, like a little bit of that would help. It's got things like, it's got frankincense, helichrysum, cedarwood, tea tree and lavender. So that one actually, I've got one of these in the car, one in my handbag. So I have these all over the place because these are really handy. And then I usually have one calming oil. The reality is that travel can be stressful. There are definitely moments of stress, and I think having at least one roller that is calming, like comes in a little roller. I took neroli with me. That's what it also doubles as a perfume. I just love the smell of neroli. But you could take something like Balance or lavender or whatever you find calming. I just think having a calming essential oil is really helpful to take for those times when you're not feeling calm. And then I take the On Guard hand sanitizer, which comes in a little spray. Well, obviously it's good for hand sanitizing when you're exposed to lots of germs, but we traveled a lot with this in Vietnam. We were eating at lots of little, street vendors and isolated places, and we used it as a surface cleaner. We used it to spray on chopsticks and cutlery just to make sure they were clean. So it's a good little multi-purpose thing. They're probably my non-negotiables in terms of essential oils. The non-negotiable supplements, there's not too many. In fact, I left a lot of supplements at home. I did take the Lifelong Vitality, which is doTERRA's kind of base level set of supplements. Lee and I take those every day, and I wanted to maintain that while we were away. It's just a good base level buffer, I guess, against all sorts of different things. And I wanted to make sure we maintained that. So we took that. The Terrazyme I've already mentioned as a digestive enzyme. The DigestZen I've already mentioned. And the other one that I do like to travel with is this one, which is called Serenity Restful Complex, because these help wind me down. And so I would take one or two of these at night, along with my melatonin, particularly if you've been out and about, lots of stimulation, this helps wind me down. And if you do have different time zones, you're adjusting to a totally different time zone, then something like this will just help your body calm down at night. I do take them. I've got this little, if you're watching, you can see it's like a little mini pill box. And so I didn't take all the big, I did take some of the big bottles, but I also had like this little pill box with a selection of those various supplements in them that just lived in my backpack that I carried around with me. So, and then I had a really small little container that I put like 2 or 3 Digestin and 2 or 3 Terrazyme that lived in my handbag. So I always had them with me wherever I was. That's pretty much it. There were some my optional extras, just to throw them in, is past tense, which I like behind my ears when I'm flying. Easy air can be quite good, just for some of that sort of easy breathing. Purify, if you're really into diffusing a lot, can be good for a stinky room or, dropping in shoes. Should have probably taken that one. I don't tend to travel with a diffuser most of the time because I don't tend to diffuse a lot of the time. But if you're a big diffuser, then there's lots of small travel diffusers you can take. There's one or two kind of key essential oils that you might like to diffuse, which is nice in a hotel room that's used lots of chemicals and you just want to clear the air. So that's where having a little travel diffuser can be handy. I just find I've often taken them away and not used them. So I just figure I'm probably not going to worry about taking that by and large. The other thing with essential oils that you do need to know is, like I said before, they will contribute to your liquid volume, whatever it was, like the volume of liquids that you can take. So make sure everything's in smaller bottles. I've never had an essential oil taken away from me at security, but early on, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I have had security question me about the essential oils. You do want to make sure you're not taking too many as carry-on luggage. So if I had checked luggage, then what I would do is really put anything I definitely wanted to use on the plane, like probably, I didn't mention peppermint before, but usually I've got peppermint beadlets. I put like 1 or 2 that I keep on the plane with me that I might use during the flight, and the rest would go in checked luggage if I had checked luggage. You just want to make sure you screw the lids up particularly tight, so they don't kind of loosen with the different air pressures. And I'll probably put them in a Ziploc bag in your checked luggage, but then you won't have any trouble getting your essential oils. I've never had trouble with carry-on, but be careful about taking too many, I would say. I did hear before I left that of a friend, another doTERRA friend, who's had supplements taken away by security at the airport. So I guess if you are traveling with checked luggage, then the more of this, supplements and oils you can put in your checked luggage, that's better. But like I said, that's never happened to me, and I've traveled with supplements through carry-on luggage all the time and not personally had a problem. So, but I suppose just being aware that it could happen is worthwhile. I think that's it. I think that's all my tips. So I hope if you've got a trip coming, up soon, or you're starting to dream about holidays, then I hope some of these little tips and experiences of mine have been helpful. You can store away. Hopefully in the discussion in the Let's Talk Thyroid Facebook community, we can have a great conversation about travel, perhaps the best and easiest place, the most thyroid friendly places you've traveled or want to travel, or other, your own personal experiences and tips and tricks. So I know we've already had a little bit of that discussion already around medication and planning ahead, like, maybe contacting hotels ahead of time. Leonie suggested that in terms of preparing for food. But let's have some more travel-oriented, thyroid-friendly, travel-oriented conversation within the Let's Talk Thyroid community. And I hope that, whatever travel you have on your agenda, even if it's just to get away for a weekend locally to you, then you can still do it and have a very thyroid-friendly, fun time as you navigate travel. Next time on the show, I'm talking with Tara Thorne all around protein, so that will be a good one. Now, before I go, I've just realised, I think in the last episode, I forgot to do the Kiss Thyroid coaching segment. Can't remember now. I recorded that one just before I went away, all around, a couple of lingering symptoms that I have. And I think I forgot to do the Kiss Thyroid coaching session. So this time, Let's just stick around for a couple more questions to help you implement what we've just been talking about. So this is your Keep It Super Simple thyroid coaching session. So number one is what I want you to do is have a think about, if you've got a trip coming up, what can you do to make that trip thyroid friendly? So maybe have a think about that and jot down a couple of things in your notebook. And number two, I'll just keep it at 2 questions for today, is if you travel with essential oils, I would love to know what your essential oils are. What's in your travel kit? Is there something different to what I've suggested? And if you don't travel with essential oils or don't even use essential oils, I'd encourage you to consider them as part of your next trip, because they can really be a very helpful, proactive, natural way to support your health while you're on holidays. And if you want some help putting together a little travel kit, let me know. I'm more than happy to help. But just, have a think, like how could you use essential oils on your next trip? So there you have it. Have a fabulous fortnight, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again next time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. If you have enjoyed the content, or perhaps you're thinking, oh, my mum needs to hear this, or my sister or my bestie, I would love it if you would share this episode with them. That really just helps spread the positive and practical message of Let's Talk Thyroid and helps that broader thyroid community, our friends and family, to live well with their thyroid health. So you can just, share the episode. If you subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast, it's free. It's really helpful because then you'll be notified every time a new podcast comes out, and it just makes it much easier to find. There's usually a little subscribe button or a bell or follow often is the terminology. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be helpful. Of course, if you want to leave a review, even better, just a sentence or two about how the podcast has helped you. You can definitely connect with me via letstalkthyroid.com. That's where you'll find access to my book, my coaching, my freebies, and really everything that I offer in terms of thyroid support.